A true warrior would fight. They would give all in the service of their friends.
Friends?
To combat the continuum of senseless violence and destruction in the world today, a stark anti-war sentiment is always relevant, wherever you can find it. When our real-world leaders fail to take accountability, to provide us with truth and clarity, we turn to storytelling to find meaningful answers. Today we will take a look back at a poetic message from a game that was underrated back in 2010, but is now considered by fans to be one of the most emotional stories in all of gaming. In a world where live-action role-playing positions humanity on the brink of extinction in body and soul, NieR's central question is, when is it too late to stop?
But wait! It doesn't have to— No one stops! It's way too late to stop!
Like most great stories, NieR operates on a simple note in a complex setting, with messaging that is easy to receive, but difficult to digest. The year is 2053. The month is summer, even though snowfall conspicuously clutters the environment, which could only mean one thing. Some sort of nuclear winter has taken over our dear planet, leaving even children to fend for themselves, while all the responsible parties are either long dead or too far up their own asses to come out and see what trouble they've created.
Pull your head out of your goddamn ass and start fucking helping us!
Although I had never played NieR before, my first time viewing the opening sequence seemed all too familiar. It's the age-old narrative of a young man, in this case only a boy, doing all that he can to save the defenseless darling, his younger sister, even if he loses himself in the process. The children take refuge in a broken-down, abandoned grocery store, lucky enough to have a single cookie left to share between them. At least it's a child's favorite, though they can't decide who should get the last bite on Earth. Of course, they aren't the only mouths to feed, as disfigured beings, remnants of cruel experimentations, emerge for their taste test. The boy battles fiercely, yet in his weakened state, he is easily overpowered, left to plea mercy. Then he remembers the temptations of the book. Selling your soul could be a necessary sacrifice to save someone you love, or at least it would be, if they hadn't already lost theirs too. Out of many, we are given our initial trick of perspective in the story, a story that truly has no villains and no heroes, only participants in tragedy. By telling the narrative across 5 different acts, with subtle references and points of view revealed in a non-linear fashion, we are allowed some time to consider the cost of loss from all sides and angles. First from one side of the story, then another, in a non-manipulative way, the full picture proving the inarguable calculations of the zero-sum formula of war and retribution. The cost of war is total, and the debts are always left to the children to pay with interest. In war, soldiers become indistinguishable on the battlefield, the lines of humanity blurred like the black scrawl, as they role-play their parts to death. In this needless sacrifice, bodies can always be replicated, but lost memories cannot be recovered so easily. If we cannot all share the same body together, we at least want to share perspectives and memories, those unique qualities that may outlast time itself, if cultivated carefully, to be passed on. In an attempt to show us the past mistakes we are incapable of learning from in simple black and white, Yoko Taro takes us to the future to paint us a picture using all the crayons in the box.
Really? Don't look back.
Life is full of unanswered questions, like what have we done to deserve our cruel fates? And why is that lady in her underwear? Well, we all know the reason to that. But when answers are not readily found in nature, we turn to art to help us. As people, we are all selfish and insecure, finding it difficult to tell our true feelings to one another, for fear of embarrassment and rejection. So we hide our feelings deep in the recesses of our minds, where they are safe from prying eyes, or write them down in journals where no ears can detect them. Stranger still, we hide behind masks or change our appearances outright to suit the other's fancy. In the real world, there are only so many possibilities. In fantasy, life is limitless. Yet within any given story, there are still rules that characters must follow in order for things to make sense. Sometimes perfect logic is not on the agenda, because emotion dictates otherwise. Yet there are always reasons behind feelings. NieR has complex characters that act out of interests and impulses, like real people would. And when there is a time for them to pretend to be stronger than they are, to hold back tears, to act tough, when they can't cry, we can. That is the gift of art. It's a vicarious perspective given to us by the storytellers so we can explore our true feelings, our deepest fears, without real-world consequences for us. Because the characters have to handle them for us so that maybe we won't need to learn from our mistakes if we can avoid them. NieR has me asking myself once more what it takes to make good characters. Characters who are interesting not just for the irony of their forced participation in strange predicaments, but for how they perform their roles in ways that are unique and singular, in spite of the required conditions under which they live and die. Anyone who is fighting under an authoritarian rule in the apocalyptic end times must put up or shut up, so the rebels are nothing new in a story about fate. What adds flavor to a warrior is how they add color to the language of their battle cries.
Love of the beast!
Let's fuck it up good!
Or how a little boy remains a determined optimist, caring for others still, despite losing everything he loved forever and living out an eternity as a last survivor, not once allowing his anguish and doubt to age his spirit. Good characters are not solely defined by how they navigate a narrative structure, how they bend the story arc and are bent with it. Good characters are distinct in traits of personality, image, and the personal evolution they take on, as they take us along with them on a journey. They don't just change the plot or change because of the plot. They change because the greater nature of their beings makes them grow, as they discover aspects about themselves the same way we learn about ourselves through them. Think how Kaine realizes that hatred and vengeance can only serve a person for so long before revenge becomes all-consuming to the point of burnout. Hate can be a powerful motivator, even if it means taking you away from the thing you cherish. When you run out of fuel using aggression, only love can light the flame of ambition. Kaine has an unusually tragic arc that makes her story remarkable, not just due to one bad event, but the ensuing spiral that consumes her. Along with her unusual personality and appearance, finally, she is a character that evolves, matures, and learns to single out love again, locating it deep within her after toiling through layers of torment for years. Halfway dead and halfway in between two sexes, she breathes life back into a world that rejected her and did its best to snuff her out of it. Maybe if we try more of that, we can add instead of subtracting to the sum.
I'm glad you're okay.
Emil, once naive and dependent, learns to accept himself and the potential that he has to offer the world is more than a cursed weapon of mass destruction, depending on how you look at it. These are characters that never once wanted to live for themselves, so they learn to live for others. And even if living for others is senseless if they aren't there to live for you, you have to try anyway, because that's what they would want, even if they can't admit it. These are characters that never once lived normal lives, because life is strange, and normal is often what we make it. The king of Facade, bound by the expectations of his lineage and the tradition passed down to him and through him, tries to be a better ruler than those before him, first by following edict, then by following his heart. His people, tired of living by the rules, wanting their lives to have meaning beyond what rigid adherence to formality can provide them, decide to buck tradition and live by instinct, which sets up one of the saddest moments in gaming, a moment that brought my full attention to this powerful anti-war story. A wedding and a funeral in one. The death of Fira at the hands of the wolves is a perfect sequence of heartbreak from one minute to the next. What's sad about her sacrifice is not that she is sorry to be saying goodbye to her king, but that she is thankful that he chose someone like her. A bride who was once a slave and a peasant, surely against the rules. We feel united against the aggressor, enough to launch a full-scale invasion for nothing but the sake of payback to offset the time for grieving. But there is no moral equivalence in taking a life as recompense, as we find out during Act B. The first playthrough shows us indiscriminate black and white killing. The second time you see that there is no right and wrong, just sadness, making for some of the best examples of dramatic irony being flipped on its head in all of gaming. What was once a saddening moment of cruelty is something deeper, a tragic tradition of cruelty being passed down. The sins of the elders demand penance from the youth. The wolf puts his faith in people only for people to let him down. If all we do is put each other down, we will all drown the same. Similarly, selfishness is not what those we care for that truly care for us in return would want. It takes a village to raise a child, not a child to raise a village, which is what makes the protagonist and the game as a whole so tragic. Sacrifices beget sacrifices. NieR breaks many rules of storytelling and perhaps game design, such as switching genres out of nowhere from action-adventure to text-adventure and visual novel. You know a video game is good when you're sat on a black menu for 30 minutes doing nothing but reading dialogue to music, and that alone is enough to make you start to get emotional. The poignant descriptions in the Dreams segment exposition dumps are so vivid that the emotional weight they create is arguably heavier than anything which could be shown to us visually. The sad tales of Kaine and Emil are told through words, because images may be too cruel, or perhaps not cruel enough for our own imaginations. NieR breaks another rule in using its unconventional narrative structure to show us surprises and perspectives, character development in place of simple conflict resolution. Like an old married couple, we may never stop arguing, but we have to learn to live together through one another. Yoko Taro was supposedly inspired by 9/11 and the ensuing misbegotten war that took hold in quest for revenge and power. NieR shows us that we have to take personal accountability for past, present, and future, and that we cannot know ourselves only through the experience of walking in our own shoes, in our own skin, but that we must try to understand how others feel as well. Like replicants, none of us have souls, but we have minds, the ability to think for ourselves and think of ourselves in a greater capacity than we are predisposed to. Whether NieR as a boy or a man, Emil nothing but a skeleton, or even just a floating head, Vice a rotten book, or Kaine a chick with a dick, these are characters that have humanity and they make us feel through their circumstances and their interplay, even if we can't make perfect sense of them. If the gestalts are the real humans, then it makes very little logic for the souls to give in to the empty vessel bodies. But then such stories scarcely adhere to perfect logic when presentation is key and the theme of sacrifice carries the most weight. As humans are not perfect, neither is NieR a perfect game, except for maybe one component, the music, which elevates its story and characters beyond the cold reality of their situations to a place warm within our hearts. Moments that might be a bit cheesy and even cliche feel authentic, like pure fantasy because of the otherworldly score. Emil's and Kaine's themes are masterpieces, used sparingly and for key moments, and they never fail to strike a chord. They are supplemented by many strong tracks for which I don't know the name, but I can remember by sound because they're a part of my conscious now. I suppose no matter how feel-good a game is, when criticism is due, it must come. Of course, NieR is an awesome story to experience, even in a game with lackluster gameplay. There are many issues with its watered-down Bayonetta combat system, shared with Automata, and its side content, which consists of primarily fetch quests that split you from one side of the map to the other, with minimal fast-traveling capabilities and long loading times. For brief flashes, there is some flair and even potential to the combat in ways that Automata also lacks. For example, playing as Kaine shows where this game could have gone if they wanted to innovate in these areas. But ultimately, thanks to limiting combo moves and a lack of freedom of expression, NieR's gameplay is only barely passable, lacking the weight, fluidity, and depth of superior hack-and-slash titles, which cast shade on an otherwise wholesome adventure story. There's 38 weapons, but there's a lack of combos, so this hardly changes the way the game functions among them. And it's pointless and obnoxious to hide the secret ending in a story-driven game behind weapon collecting and upgrade grinds. The like that took me almost 40 hours of grinding to platinum out of 76 hours. Was it fun? Not so much, but ultimately because I liked the game, it was worth it. The world of NieR is pretty, but serves little purpose beyond the grind of going back and forth to farm for items, and as an excuse to listen to the OST in passing, which is probably why they nixed fast travel, so you can hear the music in its full glory. You can interact with sometimes interesting NPCs that all have at least one memorable line to offer in relation to the world and its events, and some of the NPCs are interesting enough to compel you to take part in their story. Pictures are wonderful things, sounds are too, and as Skillup would say, the combination of these qualities work together in synesthesia to make NieR one of the most unique games out there, which is strange to say considering there are multiple versions of NieR and a sequel. As much as I don't like remakes, NieR Replicant version 1.22474487139 is a worthy upgrade in many ways. It would appear to me, from the game from 2010, with improved art style and voice delivery in some cases. Even if it becomes difficult to relate to the characters and their predicaments in the story, through great voice acting and beautiful images, we begin to feel as if we connect to them, if only in small ways. Julie Ann Taylor is incredible as Emil, one of the big reasons that the character is so human. And Laura B is always playing sexy characters with her sexy voice, except the downgrade of Mary Jane. I must say though, good games expose bad games and vice versa. There's a lot of fingers I could point at other games in this industry that try and fail to be artistic, whereas NieR succeeds by being made with love. I will point a finger at Forspoken and reminisce at how bad Forbroken was as a story. Both are Square Enix games, one plagiarizing the other. Vice is much better as a talking object than that dumb bracelet in Forspoken. I wouldn't like to personally compare NieR to any other game out there other than its direct sequel, which I also played and appreciated very much for its aesthetics and pacifist message. NieR, whichever version you play, is a good game, an emotional experience showing that storytelling is capable of affecting us in positive ways by showing us what we are and what we are not. As a game, NieR could have been different. It could have been better. But as it is, it's still NieR to our hearts.
No more crying, okay?
No more crying. Not a fucking chance, hussy.
I can't stop now. Damn it.
stay focused.